What's going on, everybody? What is going on? It is Monday, November 13th, 2023, and we are here in the early afternoon. Now, y'all know I usually never, ever do a live stream this early, but you know what? Today is a very special occasion again. Now, if you would have told me at any point that I would have done 4 consecutive live streams in a row from Friday to today, I probably would have laughed at you, because y'all know I usually try to not do so many live streams and also just keep it strictly to be on that Friday like I usually do. But so much stuff has happened that is like I couldn't resist. You know, y'all got the main live stream on Friday like y'all usually do. Then I had that other live stream on Saturday. Then we talked about Daniel Cameron yesterday in a Triple P, and then to follow it with another live Triple P on Tim Scott today. That is unheard of for me. But you got to, like they say, you got to strike while the iron is hot, and the iron is heating up. Wake up calls are coming all over the place, just one after another. I'll tell you about them domino effects. When one domino falls, the rest fall with it. But before we get into it, shout out to everybody that is here. Shout out to everybody. Hope y'all hit the like button. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. Y'all got a new video up today. Shout out to all of my members. Shout out to everyone in the Discord, people who follow me on X, Instagram, all of that good stuff. So let me go ahead and acknowledge the people who are here so far in the chat. Didn't have to be here running wild. VTLB, Hoyt TWD, DSM Sinister, Retro Gemini 99, CW 5009, True Emperors Entertainment, Kush God Returns, Jotham Fitzgerald, Kid Gravity Beyond. Shout out to Kid Gravity because he just did his live stream about Tim Scott about less than an hour ago. X-Rated Wallow, Cool Spider, Dimple Face, Tidra Mitchell, DC Precise, Key Prince, Sybil, Deneen Grant, The Outavist, Love S, Denise Scales, Catsy, Scoop 2003, Till Dog 12. Who else we got in here? Tamika's Den, Zarp, Dewani Nelson, 1619 Brood, Demarcus Vaughn, Carla Jenkins. Carla, I knew you was going to be in here. We know you love the Triple P's. Blueberry Muffin, CK Mystic, DSB, Don P. Ben Yehuda, DD Phoenix, Abbott Cole. Who else we got in here? The list, the names keep going on and on. Black Spider, King. Shout out to, hold on. Shout out to Black Wonder for, I'm not sure what currency. Oh, is that Mexico? Is that Mexico? Is that what that is? I'm guessing that's 20. I guess that's $20 translated into US currency. Because if it was $200, it would be in red. Shout out to Black Wonder for the super chat. Appreciate it. Let's see who else we got. B first is Bills Fan 1970 Explore. Okay, I thought so. That's the Mexican peso. Thought so. Kush God Returns and Computer Robots. We already got 112 people in here so far, and I haven't even gotten into the commentary yet. But let me tell y'all how I found out about the whole Tim Scott situation. So I was on my computer last night because I was editing a video. As a matter of fact, the video that I'm editing, or that I edited last night, is going to be the video y'all are going to get tomorrow. And I got the update to the story that I was talking about on Yahoo. And you know how on Yahoo, sometimes whenever there's a breaking story, they'll put like a banner at the top of the screen. I didn't pay any attention to it at first because I was just focusing on editing and adding in this last piece of information to the video y'all are going to see tomorrow. Then I just looked up and I saw this bright orange banner. And in that banner, it said, breaking. Presidential candidate Tim Scott suspends his campaign. And a light bulb just went off in my head and said, oh, the people going to get a Triple P tomorrow. I said, and I'm gonna have it at 12 noon. I don't know how many people is gonna show up, but it looks like it's a lot of people in here right now. I know, like, it's Monday afternoon. Some of y'all may be on your break, so I might have caught y'all at a good time, but it's still a work day nonetheless. So yeah, Tim Scott suspended his campaign. And when I tell you the new black media been on it so far, Harvey was the first person I saw do a video about it. I think Lisa Kabir did a video on it. Professor Black Truth, that was his moment of truth this morning. And Kid Gravity did a live stream on it about less than an hour ago. And now I'm talking about it. And I think Rob over at Blacklight Revelations, he talked about it in his late night live stream that he did. Like sometimes he goes live in early in the morning and he talks about different topics. And that was one of the first that he talked about because I heard it in the playback. So I'm sure that there are going to be others that are going to talk about this and revel in it just as much as we are. And let's be honest here. Did Tim Scott think he had a chance in hell of actually winning the presidency? This is kind of the same question we was asking about Daniel Cameron yesterday. So, as a matter of fact, a lot of the questions we were asking about Daniel Cameron yesterday could be applied to Tim Scott today. So you got one person who was running for governor. He's out. He's going to have to go back to just doing whatever he was doing. And Tim Scott, he just going to have to go back to being a senator while they allow him to still be a senator in the state of South Carolina. And it's just so interesting and poetic how all of this just happened. But I said, instead of me just hitting y'all with the news that dropped yesterday immediately, I mean, because we already know the news that he dropped out, I said I wanted to take people on a journey right quick. I wanted to start from not the very beginning, but like early on, leading up to him dropping out, like some of the stuff that he has said, some of the times that he has buck danced, the time he has pushed for legislation for other groups of people, and then lead into the part about him dropping out. And what I might actually also do today, like I did yesterday, is I'll probably drop the link again. So if people want to come up and air their grievances out, or not so much grievances, because let's be real here, I don't think anybody's pissed about this at all, then we can do that as well. So the first thing we're going to start off with, hold on, let me share my screen right quick. Let's start off with this very infamous video right here where Tim Scott infamously said that America was not a racist nation. Now, we always only heard the last part of it where he says it, but we never heard what he said leading up to that. Now, this video is from 2021.
When America comes together, we've made tremendous progress, but powerful forces want to pull us apart. 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
All right, so there it is right there. That's the whole video right there, the whole clip. Because like I said, we only always heard that part where he says America's not a racist nation. And shout out to Lisa Kabir, because she was the first person I saw use that clip in her videos. And that's how I got exposed to this. But this is the whole clip. It's only like a little over a minute long. Like I said, this was made by him in 2021 when he said this. And like we said yesterday with Daniel Cameron, Black people, well, if you don't, you should, have a long memory when it comes to what a lot of these buck dancers and these tap dancers say. Like with Daniel Cameron and Breonna, with what he did not do with Breonna Taylor. That was only 3 years ago. Hell, if it was 30 years ago, we would still remember it. And that's why a piece of why he lost. But let's be real here. Tim Scott, of course, didn't stand a chance. He didn't have Black supporters like that. He's like Daniel Cameron. He made sure that he plants himself as the only speck of pepper in a sea of salt. They make no attempts to talk to Black people, but they have a way of talking down on Black people any chance they get. And they make sure that when they do it, they're around nothing but PC individuals. Now, it's funny that Tim Scott says that America is not a racist nation when he was born and raised in South Carolina. This man is what, 57 years old. He was born in the 60s. So you really telling me that you didn't deal with that back then? It doesn't matter at what point that you know that you dealt with it. It's the fact that you did, and it happened in this establishment. But see, he's been around them people for too long, and they probably got in his head. It's interesting too, because didn't Tim Scott say that he dealt with racism? I think he recently said that. When I say recent, I'm not talking about like last week or yesterday. I'm talking about like a couple months ago. And I know it was like probably this year. I could have sworn he said that. Like, again, he's from South Carolina. To say that America's not a racist nation and you from South Carolina and you was born in the 60s, we don't believe you. My mother was born and raised in South Carolina. She's slightly older than Tim Scott. She was at the tail end of segregation when she started to go to elementary school or middle school, whenever it was. I think it was elementary school. So I find it very hard to believe that Tim Scott never dealt with it. Very hard to believe. Zarp said, my mom was born and raised in Jim Crow, South Carolina, and believe me, there was a lot of anti-black racism. Exactly. Shout out to Big Sheba for the $5 super chat. They said, I just got here, but these tools are getting broken left and right all of a sudden. Exactly. And we're not even out of the month of November, which is the month that the election happens in next year. See, it was not enough for Tim Scott to just drop out of the election, of running for president. There's some things that happened along the way as well, which leads me into this next comment that he made. Now, this was posted September 27th, 2023 on this website called newrepublic.com, where Tim Scott is quoted as saying, slavery wasn't as bad as welfare for Black Americans. Is this dude living out of his head? He said slavery wasn't as bad as welfare for Black Americans. Welfare if welfare was all Black people had to deal with instead of slavery, I think Black people would have took the welfare much more than slavery. If those were our options, if those were our ancestors' options, I'm sure they probably would have taken the welfare. But to sit up there and say that slavery wasn't as bad as welfare, when some of his ancestors was most likely enslaved. Shout out to Black Light Andrew for the super chat. He said, Professor Black Truth, words are not just an expression, but a prophecy. When Dub S is done with its tools, it breaks their tools. Exactly. Let's go on into this article to see what else he said. A lot of deplorable things were said during the Republican debate on Wednesday night, but this comment from Republican candidate Tim Scott may take the cake. During the debate, Scott argued that welfare assistance was harder than slavery for Black Americans. Tim Scott is quoted as saying, Black families survived slavery, he exclaimed. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. He added in a line that for a moment sounded like he might actually be acknowledging systemic racism. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money, where they decided to take the Black father out of the household to get a check in the mail. And shout out to CK Mystic and Sybil for the super chat. Sybil sent 5, CK Mystic $1.99. CK said, it says Dub S don't want to be led by their own yes men. Exactly. Oh, they got a clip when he actually said it. Hold on, let's play.
Here's the challenge, though. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail. And you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation.
Here's the thing, Tim Scott. Welfare didn't only apply to black people. As a matter of fact, black people were one of the last groups to get welfare. And shout out to J Cage for the $5 super chat. He said, I'm still calling BS on his out of nowhere. Oh, we're going to get on that. Trust and believe. We're going to tackle that one. But yeah, black people were like the last group or one of the last groups to get welfare. Like Blueberry Muffins in the chat. Black people didn't get welfare into the 60s. When welfare started, government assistance started, we know who got it first and had it for years before black people even touched one food stamp. But for him to sit up there and literally say unapologetically that welfare was worse for black Americans than slavery, black people didn't even get a part of the weren't even a part of the welfare system, even an ounce close to the amount of time and years and decades and centuries that they were enslaved. Welfare for black people is actually still fairly recent. We still have black people that are older than the government assistance program that was put in place. Johnson's Great Society, launched in 1964, was one of the most significant federal social welfare programs in the U.S. history. It greatly expanded welfare policy by writing Medicare and Medicaid into U.S. law, increasing Social Security benefits, and generally expanding assistance into the elderly and the poor. That Scott had harsher words for welfare assistance than for slavery is not just an over a historical reach. Frankly, it is embarrassing. And shout out to CK Mystic again for the $4.99 super chat. They said Tim Scott is another dude talking about households and bad parenting with no skin in the game, just like Not My Elder. Exactly. Yeah, because Larry loved to say and talk about fatherlessness in America. Meanwhile, when he was married to his first wife wanted kids. He did not. So Larry Elder could have been a father today, but he was the one that chose not to have children. And then on top of that, he had a bad relationship with his dad before his dad passed. But he's going to sit up there and try to talk about fatherlessness in America while he himself is not a father and didn't want to be. And the father he did have, something just tells me with the way that Larry Elder is, I bet he did something to piss his dad off. Or maybe his dad did something to piss him off and it wasn't even something worth pissing someone off over. It was probably so minute. So that's that article. Let's move on to the next one. Now, it's funny how Tim Scott says that, America's not a racist nation and all of that and whatnot. Yet he managed to find a way to pencil into his schedule to introduce legislation to defund colleges and universities that promote anti-Semitism. But remember what he said. He said America is not a racist nation. Let's see what he's talking about. And this was posted on scott.senate.gov. So this is his website. On October 19th, 2023. Today, U.S. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina led Senators Marsha Blackburn, Katie Britt, John Cornyn, Joni Ernst, Cindy Hyde-Smith, and James Langford in introducing the Stop Anti-Semitism on College Campuses Act, which would rescind federal education funding for colleges and universities that peddle anti-Semitism or authorize, fund, or facilitate events that promote violent anti-Semitism. Any university or college that peddles blatant anti-Semitism, especially after Hamas' brutal attack on Israeli civilians, women, and children, has no place molding the minds of future generations, never mind receiving millions of taxpayer funds to do so, said Senator Scott. We must not only call out this hate, but crush it wherever it rears its ugly head. If these schools don't change their ways, my legislation hits them where it hurts, their pocketbooks. No college or university should receive a single cent from the federal government to fund violent anti-Semitism. This legislation comes on the heels of Georgetown University, Columbia University, the University of California, Los Angeles, New York University, and more, who have hosted marches and rallies in coordination with Students for Justice in Palestine, a group which called Hamas attack a historic win for the Palestinian resistance. And shout out to Black Wonder again for another $20 super chat. They said, Tim, did we survive Black Wall Street or Lake Lanier? Now you know he ain't gonna answer that question. Look at this. He has a whole legislation that says if there's any anti-Semitism on these college campuses, we're gonna take away their funding. And look at how quick he did it. Because everything that's going on overseas right now it's just getting started. It's still early on. And look at how fast he drafted this up. A Cornell professor calling the Hamas terror attacks exhilarating and exciting, and a Columbia professor praised Hamas actions as astonishing, astounding, awesome, and incredible. Congressman Mike Lawler introduced the companion legislation in the House of Representatives. From outrageous anti-Semitic rhetoric in graduation speeches to celebrations of the recent Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel, the rising anti-Semitism on college campuses is alarming and must be confronted, said Congressman Mike Lawler. No college or university should receive a single dollar of federal education funding if they allow for the promotion of anti-Semitism at an event on campus. That's why I introduced H.R. 3773, the Stop Anti-Semitism on College Campuses Act, and why I applaud Senator Tim Scott for introducing this legislation in the Senate. Congress must work in a bicameral fashion to stamp out the scourge of anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head. Now, some of y'all probably didn't even know this existed. Kid Gravity might have known. Exactly, Zarp. He said he would never introduce an anti-black hate crime bill. He says anti-Semitic bill is a handout for PC. What's going on, Craig? But yep, this is on his site. But again, he said America is not a racist nation. VTLB says, is it me or do all of these bootlicks talk the same? It's like they have no holdback in the base of their voice. Right. Right. They do. They all sound the same. They sound robotic. They sound like they're reading from a prompter or a script or whatever it is. They all do sound the same. And in some cases look the same too. All right, so we got through that article. Let's see what this next one is hitting on. I think this one's a video. So we have this right here, and this is recent. This was November 6th. This was just a couple days ago. Tim Scott is 2024 only Black Republican candidate, and he wants America to focus less on race. Keep in mind what I just read to you, y'all.
The next American century starts today.
So there you have it. Tim Scott was born September 19th, 1965 in North Charleston, South Carolina, but he wants us to believe that America is not a racist nation. Okay. Listen to that. Raised by a single mom who he says worked 16 hours days to support him and enable him to a path from working class poverty to the U.S. Senate. Has anyone noticed that a lot of these politicians of a certain degree seem to have parental issues? Like, Larry Elder, for example. Where was Tim Scott's pappy?
Others out there who are working their tails off, working hard, trying to make the ends meet, wondering if it's worth it. You can.
I'm kind of skipping around because it's not like they're playing too much. Like he's not saying a lot.
It's not a Republican sides. This is about the American people and our financial future. Let's take that more seriously.
and Opportunity Act, which targets Americans of
Okay,
all
I'm done.
colors,
Look,
are losing faith in the institutions of authority and power in this nation. The real story is always redemption.
okay, Tim. That's another thing that be killing me about Tim Scott too, when he be talking like that, like he trying to be all preachy and trying to whisper. Like, stop whispering and talk. But anyway, and on top of that, look where he gave this at. He told a bunch of people at a black church that America needs to focus less on race. It's like, do you not know how to read the room? You wasn't in a room full of PC people when you said this. You know, people who love to hear something like that. He said South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is the only black candidate vying for the GOP's presidential nomination. And while he has talked openly about race in America while denying it, sometimes seizing the moment to challenge his competitors, his messaging on the issue hasn't often separated him from other candidates in the field. Since he launched his bid for the White House, Scott, like his Republican rivals, has leaned into his belief that America is not a racist country and his opposition to so-called critical race theory and other views that emphasize identity. Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every rung of the ladder that helped me climb, he said in his campaign launch speech in May. When I cut your taxes, they called me a prop. When I refunded the police, they called me a token. When I pushed back on President Biden, they even called me the N-word, he said. I disrupt their narrative. I threaten their control. The truth of my life disrupts their lives. In October, Scott deviated from usual stops in the early voting states of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina to visit a black church on the south side of Chicago. And you did this in Chicago? Again, not knowing how to read the room. There is a radical movement on the far left, and the more progress that America makes on race, the more some leaders want to deny it. Scott told the congregants in the New Beginnings Church, our country has made, however, tremendous strides since then on the issue of race, but lawlessness and fatherlessness he said it, y'all. Fatherlessness, the same thing Larry Elder always talks about. And he grew up with a single mother. He didn't even know his dad. And he's not a dad himself. And that's probably for good reason. And joblessness have gotten worse in the last 60 years and not better. His speech in Chicago was intended in part to clarify controversial remarks he made at the second Republican primary debate in September. Scott drew criticism then after he appeared to suggest that President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society federal welfare program in the 60s had been more difficult for Black Americans than slavery. He sounds like a white man. And I want y'all to understand something. How Tim Scott is talking right now, how Daniel Cameron is, all these other tap dancers, that is what the overall society, as far as PC goes, would prefer to see Black people as a collective be. Because it makes them feel good and doesn't make them feel like they have a weight on their shoulders either. As far as we're concerned, whenever we call this stuff out, we're basically an anchor to them. Former Republican National Committee Chair Michael Steele, who was Black, called Scott's debate comments a load of crock. His more than an hour-long speech at the New Beginnings Church also called out Democratic leadership in Chicago in his view, the Black community. Many of those elected officials are Black. And shout out to Blacklight Andrew for the $5 super chat. He said, I'm surprised that he made it out of Chicago alive after that speech. If everything can be based and blamed on systemic racism, the problems can't be the liberals' fault, Scott told the audience. They want us to sit down, shut up, and don't forget to vote as long as we're voting blue. Instead of solutions, we are offered distraction and division. Afterwards, attendees were eager to pepper Scott, who rarely addresses Black audiences on the campaign trail, with tough questions. Many of the exchanges were tense, as they should be. Attorney Roderick Wimberly said he came to the church with his wife Evelyn out of respect for what Scott has accomplished. When it was his turn to speak to the South Carolina senator, Wimberly challenged Scott. I've seen both in the debate and also in statements that you've made where you've indicated that you don't feel that there's systematic racism. He said, there is statistical data to show or suggest at the very least there is some issue where it is systemic. Scott told him, I'm saying that there is racism, but it's not the system. Then Tim Scott, what is it then? Then what is it then? See, Tim Scott's one of the people that feels like racism doesn't go as far as someone calling another black person the N-word. He's one of those. He's one of those people. The pair went back and forth on education, redlining, referring to discrimination in financial loans and inequities in wealth before Scott was ushered away by his staff. Yeah, because he was feeling the heat. He couldn't answer them questions. After the conversation, Wimberly told ABC News he came that day open to voting for Scott, but after their interaction, and he and his wife wouldn't cast the ballot for him at this time. Well, you don't have to worry about it because ain't nobody casting the ballot for him now. The disconnect illustrates a challenge Scott and more broadly the Republican Party has in making significant inroads with black voters. In the last presidential election, 87% of black voters backed Democrat Joe Biden, according to ABC News exit polling. So I want y'all to really pay attention to this statement right here, because this pretty much answers a question right now as to why a lot of black people continue to vote the way that they do. You see that exchange that Tim Scott had with that black man who came there? He said he came there open-minded. He came with his wife, and he said, you know what? I was prepared to actually vote for this man, but after that exchange, I'm not voting for him anymore. Imagine had he had not went. Or imagine if he didn't speak with him. The way that Tim Scott carries on, and this is a black man talking to black people like that. This is why they don't know how to talk to black people, and they don't get a lot of the support. With the Democrats, they'll just smile on your face and say you what you want to hear. That way they can lead people like lambs to slaughter, but that by the time the lamb gets there, it's too late. But with them, they like tell you right there in front of your face what it is or what it is not going to be. And they probably thought, oh, Tim Scott, he's this black man. Maybe he's actually down. Nah, you better check that man's resume. We just went through something that was on his page of what he's doing for another group of people. Nadia Brown, a political scientist and professor at Georgetown University, argued that Scott's messaging on race is most likely not directed at black voters at all. Instead, the senator, who has struggled so far to gain traction in the polls, is pitching himself as a non-white candidate who agrees with the issues that motivates the GOP base. Pretty much, we know who he's going for. He just went to go talk to black people because that's probably the most black people he's been around in a very long time. The vast majority of Republican primary voters, 92%, were white in 2020, the last presidential election year, according to a 538 analysis. What Tim Scott and those of his ilk are doing, they're trying to play on these emotional push pins that most black people don't see. It's not landing for them, Brown said. I think it's a call out to other conservatives, particularly white conservatives, who want to say, I have a black senator or I feel comfortable voting for a black candidate. In rare moments, Scott has cited his race to break from others in the Republican primary field. In July, he criticized Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for supporting a change in the state's standards that directed educators to teach middle school students enslaved people develop skills which in some instances could be applied in their personal benefit. But this is the same guy that came right back around and tried to say that welfare was worse than slavery. So I can't take Tim Scott seriously. Scott suggested to reporters that DeSantis should rethink his position. What slavery was really about was separating families, about mutilating humans, and even violating their wives. It was just devastating. Couldn't have been that devastating if you thought welfare was worse. Scott suggested to reporters that DeSantis should, I already read that part. DeSantis has defended the standards, telling ABC News' Lindsay Davis in September it was not saying that slavery benefited. it was saying that these folks were resourceful. Though the audience for his Chicago speech was predominantly black, the crowds at Scott's typical campaign styles are overwhelmingly white. At those events, Scott often declares that he will speak like a pastor in the famous tradition of the black clergy. And I've seen him do his little preach pastor act. It is so cringe. And he's done it. Some of you probably have seen him do it. Leah Wright Rigger, a history professor at Johns Hopkins University and author of The Loneliness of the Black Republican, analyzed how Scott presents himself in the primary field. Because Tim Scott doesn't have certain markers of what the Republican base wants in a candidate, he's not white and he's not married, he plays up on other things. He plays up certain tropes about black people, and he leans into this kind of religious identity that I really think brings out a comfort for white audiences, Wright Rigger said. Scott has to talk about race, but he has to do it in a way that doesn't alienate the main players in the party. And that's extremely hard to do, given that the standard line on race in the party right now is that we don't have a problem. And in fact, it's other people who are the real racists, Wright Rigger told ABC News. Both of these statements are spot on when it comes to describing not only Tim Scott, but a lot of these other black politicians who do the same thing. In other words, Tim Scott, he is the safe Negro. For all we know, he could be very well aware of what's going on, but because he has to play up to a certain audience, that's what he does. It kind of reminds you of that mayor down there in Alabama who got that tape leaked of him where he said he didn't need black people's votes or everything like that. As long as he had the white vote, he's good. That's the line of thinking that Tim Scott has. In response to Scott's speech at the Chicago church, Representative Jonathan Jackson, who is black and represents part of the city in Congress, told ABC News he's trying to capitulate and kowtow to an extremist right-wing group, and he ought to be ashamed of himself. The crazy thing is, I don't think he is. When criticized for his stance on race, Scott responds with an oft-repeated refrain placing the blame on the political left, for he argues trying to silence another view. I've been called a prop, a token, the N-word, and more ugly names than I can share, Scott said in a recent fundraising appeal. Other black conservatives agree with Scott's sentiments. Of course they do. What did I just say? Now we about to get takes from the others. It's obvious what America's past has been, but there's nobody alive today that could sit up and say, well, I didn't develop into my full potential because I wasn't given an opportunity, said Raynard Jackson, a Republican political consultant who was black. I think Scott hit all the right notes in the right key. William Oden, chairman of the Sumter, South Carolina Republican Party, who was also black, voted for Scott in his Senate bid and loved Scott's quote-unquote optimistic message. His message dispels the rumor that people talk about our country being racist, Oden said. Although Scott had told ABC News that his team discussed giving his Chicago church speech for a very long time, he delivered it amid signs that his campaign is faltering. Super PAC supporting Scott announced it would pull fall ads from TV, and he's still polling in the single digits nationally, as well as in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, according to 538's average. He only just managed to qualify for the third Republican primary debate set for Wednesday. Hold on, y'all, right quick. I'll be back. All right, y'all, I'm back. All right, where did I leave off? This is before Scott's Chicago speech. His team held a call to announce a plan to shift resources from New Hampshire and increase staffing in Iowa so that they were equipped to go all in. Campaign manager Jennifer DeCasper also joined him in the city in a rare appearance to signal what the campaign saw as a major moment. DeCasper is the only black woman at the helm of a Republican presidential campaign this cycle, and some point to the diversity within Scott's staff as an illustration of his commitment to Communities of color. Oh my God. Communities of color. That's where they can't bring themselves to say black, but to save their life. Tim just doesn't believe in diversity. He is diverse, said Jackson, the consultant. If you go to his office, it's nothing but the definition of diversity. It is not forced or contrived diversity. That's just who he is. He's the diversity hire. They might as well just say that. Given that there was a black woman who was essentially guiding his larger political future, that is really important for how he is thinking, talking about race right now, she said. Scott's campaign declined to comment for this article. His recent remarks at the University of Mississippi are perhaps most emblematic of how he will continue to address the topic of race in a party that de-emphasizes identity. I don't want to be the black conservative. I don't want to be the black Southerner, he said in late October. I want to be Tim Scott, who happens to be black. This is right up there with I'm not black, I'm OJ. It's right up there with that. Terrible. All right, y'all. So now that we got a little bit of a backstory involving Tim Scott, now it's time to head into why y'all, excuse me, why y'all are really here. And that is Tim Scott announcing last night that he dropped out of the race to be president of the United States. Put a 1 in the chat if you're surprised by this. Put a 2 if you're not. I'm right there with you. Shout out to all the people that put a 2 in the chat because we are all in this together. Nobody is shocked. Honestly, I don't even know why he ran. I guess they just said we needed to have a black man up there. So yeah, Tim Scott, come on. What does have me is that he lasted three debates. Because I would have swore he probably would have dropped out at least after the first one. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's the only thing that probably shocks me is how long he stayed on. But besides that, I'm not surprised that he dropped out. But let's go ahead and see what they're talking about on here on AP, the Associated Press. Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott abruptly announced late Sunday that he was dropping out of the 2024 race, a development that surprised his donors and stunned his campaign staff just 2 months before the start of voting in Iowa's leadoff GOP caucuses. Now, peep that. This man didn't even tell his campaign staff that he was dropping out of the race. He just did it. So they pretty much found out when we did. Like, he didn't even consult with his campaign staff to tell them that I'm dropping out of this race. He just dropped out. No announcement, like no heads up to tell them that, hey, I'm about to drop out of this race. So there you go. The South Carolina senator who entered the race in May with high hopes made the surprise announcement of Fox News. Of course, he went to Fox News Sunday night in America with Trey Gowdy, one of his closest friends. The news was so unanticipated that one campaign worker told the Associated Press that campaign staff found out Scott was dropping out by watching the show. I love America more today than I did on May 22nd, Scott said Sunday. But when I go back to Iowa, it would not be as a presidential candidate. I am suspending my campaign. I think the voters who are the most remarkable people on the planet have been really clear that they're telling me, not now, Tim. Not now, Tim. Not ever is what they really want to say. Not now, not ever. Scott's impending departure comes as he and the rest of the GOP field has struggled in a race that has been dominated by former President Donald Trump. Despite 4 criminal indictments and a slew of other legal challenges, Trump continues to poll far ahead of his rivals, leading many in the party to conclude the race is effectively over, barring some stunning change of fortune. Scott, in particular, has had trouble gaining traction in the polls despite millions spent on his behalf by high-profile donors. In his efforts to run a positive campaign, he was often overshadowed by other candidates, particularly on the debate stage, where he seemed to disappear as others sparred. It was unclear whether Scott would qualify for the upcoming 4th debate, which will require higher polling numbers and more donors. Scott is the second major candidate to leave the race since the end of October. Former Vice President Mike Pence suspended his campaign 2 weeks ago, announcing at a Republican Jewish coalition gathering in Las Vegas that this is not my time. Pence, however, was polling behind Scott and was in a far more precarious financial position. Scott said he wouldn't immediately be endorsing any of his remaining Republican rivals. The voters are really smart. The best way for me to be helpful is to not weigh in on who they should endorse. He also appeared to rule out serving as vice president, saying the number 2 slot has never been on my to-do list for this campaign, and is certainly not there now. Scott's departure leaves Nikki Haley, Trump's first United Nations ambassador and former South Carolina governor, as the sole South Carolinian in the race. As governor, Haley appointed Scott, then newly elected to his U.S. House term, to the Senate in 2012, and the fact that both were in the 2024 race had created an uncomfortable situation for many of the donors and voters who had supported them both through the years. It also sparked some unpleasant on-stage moments during the first 3 GOP debates, with longtime allies who for a time had also shared political consultants trading tense jabs. After the surprise announcement, some of Scott's donors said they would be switching back to Haley in the primary. In a post on X Sunday night, Haley called Scott a good man of faith and an inspiration to so many. He ain't an inspiration to us. That's for damn sure. So I don't know who he's inspiring. Adding that the GOP primary was made better by his participation in it. See, they just talk. This is a bunch of fluff. I bet a lot of this they don't even mean. I'm not even going to read the rest of it because it's very lengthy. And I really want to get to the last article, which is the one that I really could not wait to get to. And that is this one right here. Tim Scott drops out of GOP primary race after quote unquote girlfriend reveal. I got a question for those in the chat. Put down in the chat how much you think Tim Scott paid for this woman to quote unquote be his girlfriend. Wallow said $100 or 100,000, 50,000, 50K, 20K, 100K, 10K, 10K, $500,000, at least 100K. I'm seeing a lot of 100Ks. $500. I feel like I'm reading. I feel like I'm an auctioneer right now, just reading all these numbers. 5 to 10K, 20. Lefty said I would have did it for 25. I can't grab it. He said rhinoplasty, aka a nose job. 50, 175. All right, so we see these numbers. I just have the strongest feeling he paid something. I don't see if this woman willingly did this for free. But I find it interesting. You know, I'm going to read the article first, and I'm going to say my point at the end. Tim Scott, a GOP senator from South Carolina, dropped out of the 2024 presidential race shortly after publicly debuting his relationship with his girlfriend after the 3rd Republican debate. I love America more today than I did on May 22nd. When I go back, I'm not going to read that part because we already read that. Scott recently came under fire regarding the secrecy surrounding his relationship with Mindy Noce or Noche. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. An interior designer he has been dating for about a year or so, Axios reported. Details of Scott's relationship with Mindy surfaced after he faced criticism over being unmarried, with some insinuating that he is in the academy. It's like a different form of discrimination or bias. The 2024 GOP presidential candidate who told the Washington Post, "You can't say I'm black because that would be terrible. So find something else that you can attack." Now, this is the part that a couple months ago, his constituents was asking a question like, they said you're 57 years old, you've never been married, you don't have any kids. So they were questioning some things. And he tried to say that he has a girlfriend, they keep their private life private, but then all of a sudden you bring her out to be revealed in this grandiose way. And this is something that Harvey touched on in his video about him. He was basically saying in so many words that Tim Scott, he literally is like a lap dog. He will do anything that they say, or he would literally run, hop, skip, do whatever they say. And I'm not surprised that his so-called girlfriend happens to be a PC woman. The shocker would have been if she was anything but that. She didn't even have to be black. It would have been shocker if she was anything but PC. It would have been, I will say this, it would have been shocking if she was black, but if she was anything else but that, I would have been shocked as well. The biggest question I have is how long do you think how long do you think she's going to be around now? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she can go back into hiding. He added that he kept her identity a secret because he couldn't imagine, quote unquote, dragging her onto the campaign trail unless I have the intention of marrying her. Well, the rest of the candidates make sure that the rest of the candidates are married too. So, I mean, there's that. The senator road to the GOP nomination saw hurdles from the outset of his campaign announcement in May. More than half of the GOP primary voters said in a Morning Consult poll that they had not heard anything about Scott's candidacy a week after his campaign rollout. In contrast, only 38% of the voters said they heard something positive about the candidate. Damn. Still, the South Carolina senator did build up a considerable war chest. Scott's campaign began with $22 million before his announcement and received substantial backing from Larry Ellison, the co-founder of the Oracle Corporation. The tech billionaire poured $35 million into the senator's super PAC, Opportunities Matter Fund. Scott told Fox News, Trey Gowdy, that he has no plans of endorsing another candidate for the Republican primary. A spokesperson for Scott's campaign did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Insider. Interesting. Yeah. I'm just curious about how long that so-called that's the biggest question. That's the question of the day. But anyway, y'all, I've dropped the link in the chat. If anybody would like to come up and say what they got to say about this whole situation, we can go ahead and get it in. I'll probably do it for maybe about 20 minutes before I get off of here. But I've dropped the link in the chat if anybody would like to come up and say what they got to say. So like we did yesterday with Daniel Cameron, feel free to do so. What's going on?
What's up, Torian? I messed up my name, but it'd be all right. But anyway, I wasn't able to catch your live stream last night, but oh my goodness, it's funny because we talked about Daniel Coomer last night.
Mm-hmm.
Then we talked about this fool right here. Now, why do they think because they have a white girlfriend they're different than everybody? Like, don't get me wrong. You want to date outside your race, but that's fine. Do what you want to do. But don't think that's going to make you the magical Negro around here. Because those folks don't care.
They really don't.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like you were saying, they also wouldn't have been like the optics either. Because it's like they not going to have Daniel Cameron, who is married to a PC woman, and they have quote unquote biracial or mixed children, be in that governor's mansion. It just didn't. It wasn't going to happen. Then you want Tim Scott. You wanted to be in the White House, the overseeing all 50 states and 2 territories with a PC woman, allegedly.
Very allegedly.
Did you think that was did you think that was going to work? Like, how did you think that was going to fly? And the thing
single
is,
mom too.
And man, but yeah, when they started to question him like about that, I'm like, Tim Scott, they're trying to tell you something.
Like they tell you to sit down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because Lindsey Graham, he falls into the same category as Tim Scott. Never have been married, never had kids, and they didn't grill him like that.
No, because he's white. He's one of the good old boys. He's not. And
exactly.
And Mitch McConnell's wife is Asian. She isn't white neither. That's why they don't like him like that neither, to a certain extent. That's what I believe, but you know how that goes. But also, I want to say this: in North Carolina, you did the bed bucking on Mark Robinson. I don't know if you remember that or not, right?
Yeah, I actually have another video coming about Mark Robinson soon, hopefully this week.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let everybody know in the chat. He is one of the Republican nominees in my state, so hopefully he gets his little wake up call too. He's another one that thinks he's I'm better than y'all, but he's filed for bankruptcy for three times already in his life. So
man,
you gonna let that guy run the state of North Carolina? No, no, come on now, people. Really, come on now.
Yeah,
I don't care. I'm familiar to a black woman.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Mark Robinson and some of the stuff that he has said, and the video that I have coming up hopefully this week about him is to put some things into perspective about the mindset of this guy who he's pandering to.
Yeah, but sorry I missed the one for yesterday. Glad I got this one today. Hope everybody is on alive and well. Be one, everybody. I'm out.
All right, appreciate it. Shout out to Wally J for coming up. We got our next person up here. Blueberry Muffin, you was up here yesterday. You had the stuff to say about Daniel Cameron, so I know you had something to say about Tim Scott. What's going on?
Hi, good morning. I'm on my break. I can cut out a little bit because this is hilarious. PC is breaking all their tools this weekend. Let me tell you about Tim Scott. I grew up in South Carolina and I grew up around him, okay? And I will say this, he was never a leader, period. He was easily manipulated, and I'm not surprised if somebody paid for him and put him in this position. He's not very politically astute, okay? He's a lapdog in all of the sense of a lapdog. Then on top of that, when you had nasty gal Nikki Haley appoint him to the Senate position, that was all politics as usual, okay? Listen, I'm surprised he made it this far
Me too.
in the Senate, and I'm also surprised that the GOP allowed him on the stage, okay? Because they didn't allow him at the CPAC, their conference. They don't allow him to speak on Newsmax or Max or anything like that. They did a good job of gassing him up, only to let him down. So, you're triple P on this guy. I'm with you. White supremacy will always break its tools. Black first, black always.
Appreciate it. And shout out to Blueberry Muffin for coming up. And I knew she was going to come up here because, again, she went in on Daniel Cameron yesterday. And like I said, as long as they continue to break their tools, hey, that brightens my day. What a way to kick off the week. Between yesterday and today, it makes you wonder what might be in store for the rest of the week. And shout out to Kid Gravity. Oh my God, you just had to have that picture up.
America's not a racist country, so I have to represent.
Wow.
November 5th, 2024.
It's happening sooner than we think.
Well,
it's like I would say the rollout is happening right now.
You know, the dominoes we got 1,000 dominoes that gotta fall. This is domino number 7. It's gonna take a little while. We're gonna get them all off. Look at that smile, boy.
Yeah, imagine you seeing that face, to be the representative of an entire nation. I'm sure the people in South Carolina don't even like having to see his face as being the senator of their state.
Can you imagine at Thanksgiving time when grandma got to make the biscuits and she got the arthritis, she just called Tim in and he just bite the can open?
So you basically saying he's a human can opener.
Beaver teeth And he talking about he gonna try to run for governor in 2026.
Yeah, he's batting up way above his pay grade.
Oh my God, look at bruh. Oh, I know. Off subject. Okay, so we're down to 4 now. The Fab
Yep.
4. The Crab 4. We should call it the Crab 4. I still say he gonna probably endorse 45. We know this.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Hold on right quick. Shout out to Tom Slick for the $20 super chat. He said keep dropping on TR. I appreciate it.
Look at that. How is this smile presidential?
I don't know. Like I said, Tim Scott looks like the hybrid of a skunk and a gopher. So we're gonna call him a scopher.
Scopher, come here. Hey, Tim. You said America wasn't a racist country. They literally trended Uncle Tim for 2 days.
And we don't run Twitter, by the way.
And we don't run Twitter. Wasn't that like the day after? No.
Oh, that's who they were talking about. I didn't know what it was. I had saw Uncle Tim like trending, but I didn't click on it. I didn't see. I was thinking maybe it's a show or something like that, because sometimes that's what it could be. But I didn't know that it was about him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was either after. It might have been after Buffalo. Let me see. Here it is. April 29, 2021. Okay, so it was 2021. What happened? Oh. There was something that happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Good point, Wallow J. He said, notice we don't even hear from Ben Carson anymore.
Yeah, somebody mentioned him in my live stream today when I was talking about how PC thinks that we're so dumb.
Right.
That we can. I'm like, okay. Ben Carson was literally the top neurosurgeon in the country, but you're right. Look at those teeth. I can't get over those teeth.
Me neither. Teeth and gums. That's what Harvey said. Teeth and gums. He said teeth and gums.
Well, he has to put the shackles back on his feet because he can't dance no more.
Right. He probably went and cried in the car.
To who?
I don't know.
His mama?
No, he went to the woman he paid.
Listen, rhinoplasty surgery is expensive nowadays. Come on. Can't get upset, man. I mean, 47 mother of 3, she trying to get back out there. It'd be funny if we find out she was a liberal.
Right.
47-year-old mother of 3. You couldn't even lie and get you like a 25-year-old female. You had to go that far. But anyway,
the desperation with that man is real. That's all I gotta say.
I guess. But he gone off the board, and now we just got to worry about ramen noodles.
Now that's gonna be the one right there.
Yeah. Oh, I already told you. It's gonna look like New Year's Eve when he drops out.
Right.
Did you see his tweet?
Who? Oh, yeah. I saw it.
Yeah,
I said, see, that's how he getting back. Yeah, because I had reposted and I said something. Yeah, like he feels like he's getting back into that corner again. So now he got to get back in that pocket where he feels comfortable, and he gonna bring up affirmative action. And of course, he makes it the NBA and the NFL, and we know when it comes to the NBA and the NFL, that is black players that dominate that.
Yeah, I bring that up because Tim. And you didn't say nothing. You applauded it. I think he was trying to get us back on his. He was trying to get us on his side. He's like, affirmative action is gone. That's great. I'm like, okay, sir.
I suppose y'all were the ones. I'm like, they were the ones that begged for it to be gone. Now it's gone, and I said it's been more of a hindrance for them since then.
You know what? I have to cuss Tim Scott a little bit. He got me back into gospel music. I never would have played that Mary Mary song if he didn't start preaching.
That's a classic song.
It is. I was like, I'm done with gospel, and then he started preaching. I said, that's the first thing that came to my head. It was either going to be that or Kirk Franklin's Stomp.
And that's exactly what that got stomped into his campaign.
Well, I guess he can try it now for a secretary job, I guess. Secretary of HUD.
You think he would actually get that?
He's a Trump friend. Sure, why not?
I suppose.
I won't
hold my breath. And speaking of breath, I just have the strongest feeling that Tim Scott's breath stink.
Well, damn. Come on, Torian. Tell him how you really feel.
I just got the strongest feeling that it does. Like,
I mean, he messed with PC a lot. You know, they don't bathe, so you know it is what it is.
I just imagine every time he opens up his mouth, like that green smoke from the cartoon come out when something smell bad.
Who had that? What supervillain had that power? I forget.
Bad breath?
No, like bad body odor and all that.
I have no clue.
Let me think. Who was he? I forget. You know what? Why I feel like, you know who he looked like? If they ever did like Batman Beyond, you know how we're in the quote unquote age of woke, he could play Derek Powers. He could be Blight.
Oh, let me look. You said Derek Powers?
Yeah, Derek Powers. He could be Blight.
I'm looking it up now.
Look it up.
Because of the green.
Yeah, look at he always be smiling when he about to kill somebody. He always smiling.
Oh yeah, I see it.
That could be him. Stinkor, that's what it was. Thank you, Bob Boy. Stinkor. Well, like you always say, there's no retirement plan for Coonan.
It's really not. And they're finding that out now.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I just want to see what that sector of YouTube is going to say about this.
You know, I actually might go and see what people have to say. You know, usually the people that speak up or people like this. What got me really was that they said that he announced that he was suspending his campaign and didn't even tell his campaign team. Like, he just did it. They said they found out by watching the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, y'all probably found out when we did.
Mm-hmm.
He was more salty than an auntie and pretzel.
Damn, Torian. Wait, are you sick?
Nah.
Sinuses?
It's a little bit. It's kind of the weather shifted a little bit up here.
Maybe it was Tim Scott's fault.
I hope not. Because if it was, I might have like flu-like symptoms, and I don't have that. Thank God.
You got some of the cool flu? Wait, you got the cool flu?
Hell no.
Oh, okay. I hope you didn't catch the COVID-19. All right, but yeah, let me get up out of here. But I enjoyed your live stream, man. I mean, that was funny. But damn, look at those teeth, boy.
Yeah, you have to quickly switch that picture back as soon as possible.
So we could just take him into the field, and he could just get like we could plant some shit with them teeth, boy.
or we could snatch some stuff up, like, you know, if we don't have a shovel on hand or anything to cut, just and let him chop it off the stalk and just deposit it into the barrel and keep him moving.
Hungry. he's like the fifth hungry hippo.
Right.
Damn, man. How you? Never mind. Shout out to Tim Scott. He's doing the Lord's work.
Right.
Shout out to Shackles on My Feet. But yeah, enjoy the rest of y'all day, fam.
All right. Appreciate you coming up.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all. Shout out to Kid Gravity. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to shut this down. I'm glad y'all were able to attend, especially on a Monday afternoon that started at 12 noon for me anyway. You know, especially if y'all live on the West Coast, y'all like still in the morning. But shout out to everybody for coming through. Shout out to all of the people that contributed to the channel. Black Wonder, Big Sheba, Black Light Andrew, CK Mystic, Sybil, J Cage, Tom Slick, and Wallow J. Shout out to everybody that came up and contributed to the conversation as well. Shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon, the members on the channel, people in the Discord, the people following me on X, on Instagram, all of that good stuff. Shout out to these wake-up calls that are just seemingly to come in abundance. I don't know what it is about the month of November right now, but hey, we're not even halfway through the month. So who knows what else is going to happen between now and November 30th, but we shall see. Okay, I will be back on here tomorrow with the video at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Y'all be safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your week and be one.